How you doing, everybody? This is unbelievable. Unbelievable what has happened in the Robert Brooks case. I mean, we have David Kingsley. David Kingsley was the only one found guilty out of the three correctional officers in this case. David Kingsley was found guilty of murder in the second degree and manslaughter in the first degree. The other officers, Nicholas Kiefer, was found not guilty of murder in the second degree, manslaughter in the first degree, gang assault, and filing a false instrument. And Matthew Gallagher himself was also found not guilty on all charges. So this is a travesty right now, a complete travesty in the court of law. And there were many things that I was concerned of, many things that I worried about. Um, Man, I cannot believe that these two officers were found not guilty. Um, this is what you have to worry about when you have a upstate jury from Oneida County that was presiding over or sitting on this case from correctional officers. Because, as I've explained to you before, when correctional officers, when the prison was built in the community, it employed 600 to 800 people in that small community. And they were working on farms before that. You follow me? And so the people in those communities have a very positive outlook on correctional officers, and they view city folks at the bottom of the barrel. They view them as waste. And so the jury consisted of people from that neighborhood, from a neighborhood that was employed by the Department of Corrections. Um, Terrible, terrible. David Kingsley, the only correctional officer found guilty of murder in the second and murder in the first, and Nicholas Kiefer, found not guilty on all charges. Matthew Gallagher, found not guilty on all charges. If you see, I had a note from, see what my note said? My note said, I'm worried about the jury. That's what my note said, worried about the jury. Unbelievable. Yeah. So come to me in the chats if you have any questions. If you have any questions, you can come in the chats. Uh, this is, I'm sure Robert Brooks' family is devastated right now at this news. What a shame. What a shame. You know, those officers that took the 22 years, the original officers that took the 22 years, they got to be sick to their stomachs right now. They probably wish they would have went to trial, because these two guys walked away clean. That means they get to go home today. It's over with. It's over with. I don't know if they'll have a civil suit against them, but they were found not liable criminally. Yeah, really, really intense. Let me see if I can get the chats going here. What a shame. Yeah, yeah, John, I hear what you're saying. What a gamble to take it to trial. They did gamble by taking it to trial, but that gamble paid off for them. That gamble paid off for them because you look at the other guys that got 22 years. Two correctional officers got 22 years. And these two guys are going home, so they definitely wish they would have went to trial. You know, wow, there was a gasp in the audience. There were people gasping in the audience. They couldn't believe these two people, these two former officers went away. And what happens, what sounds crazy right now, is that these two officers that were found not guilty of on all charges probably have the opportunity to get their job back in the Department of Corrections and remain correctional officers because now they weren't convicted. They do not, being arrested doesn't mean anything. Being charged doesn't mean anything. They were not convicted, and the fact that they were not convicted enables them. They're not convicted felons. They're able to get their jobs back. A matter of fact, if they don't get their jobs back, they can probably sue to get their jobs back because they don't have any culpability of any wrongdoing right now, right? And it's pretty insane. So out of the 10, right? There's still one more that has to go to trial. Out of the 10 total correctional officers that were charged, uh, three of them went free. Nicholas Kiefer went free. Matthew Gallagher went free, and there was a third one that they let go, like on probation for filing a false instrument with a suspended sentence. So that leaves 7 left. 6 of them went to prison, and there's one more. But this was incredible. I really can't believe this. My estimate was that David Kingsley was going to get 10 to 15 years. And he's going to get a little more than that because he was found guilty of murder in the second degree and manslaughter in the first degree. That was my guesstimate. If you watch my video from the other day, I said Kingsley's going to get 10 to 15 years. They're going to find him guilty. So I hit that one kind of on the head. They did find him guilty. He's going to get more than 10 to 15 years. The other two I got wrong. I got to tell you, the other two I got wrong. Nicholas Kiefer, I said he might end up with 5 to 10 years. And Matthew Gallagher, I thought was going to end up 5 to 10 years. But I told you, this was my note from the video the other day. That's what I said. I'm worried about the jury. You see that? I had that note on my desk. I'm worried about the jury, because I'll explain it again one more time. The Department of Corrections, before that prison was built in the community, most of those guys were farmers and country boys, not knocking farmers and country boys. I'm just saying that's what they were. They were farmers and country boys. And then the prison got built in the community and it employed 600 to 700 men in that community. I know I'm repeating myself, but I want you to understand this. Right. And so because the prison employed so many people in the community, right, because it did that, they have a love for the prison system. They have a love for it. It is their support system. It is their network. It is everything to them. That's their retirement, their pension, their paid vacation, their overtime. That's for 600 men in that community. And now the jury is from that community. Right? Everyone on that jury probably knows someone that works inside of the prison system. Everyone on that jury probably knows someone who's a correctional officer because there's only a few thousand people in the community there, right? And they see prisoners as a piece of garbage. They see prisoners as a piece of garbage. Sort of had this feeling after the questions and time it took. Yeah. The more time. Holy fuck. Very funny name. The more time a jury stays out, the more you have to worry. This is crazy. I cannot believe this one. All I can take satisfaction in, the only thing I can take satisfaction in is the fact that 7 of them went away to jail. Yeah. How is Bill Fitzpatrick feeling? I think he feels like he lost the case. He feels like getting 1 out of 3 is making you feel like you lost the case. If I was a district attorney and I was prosecuting 3 people, right? Now I'll play devil's advocate a little bit, right? Right? I'm not saying I agree with this, but I'll tell you how people see it. If Nicholas Kiefer, right? Nicholas Kiefer was the one who pepper sprayed Robert Brooks when he was on the ground. Maybe they didn't feel. Look, let me check my stuff here. Nicholas Kiefer was the one who pepper sprayed Robert Brooks, and then after he pepper sprayed Robert Brooks, right? Supposedly he left the room. That's what the camera showed. So maybe the jury felt that just pepper spraying Robert Brooks wasn't enough. There was no film, no footage of Nicholas Kiefer beating Robert Brooks. There was no film of Nicholas Kiefer choking or kicking or punching Robert Brooks, right? They didn't, I don't believe that Nicholas Kiefer was on film, right? And so he got off. They didn't feel that pepper spraying him was enough. And Matthew Gallagher as well. I don't know how much they had on video of him. hitting Robert Brooks or contributing to his death, but it was David Kingsley who had his hands around the throat of Robert Brooks. And this is why I believe they found him guilty of murder, is because it was David Kingsley. So now, when you have David Kingsley was found guilty of murder, he's got to get 20 years at least. 25 years. He's definitely facing a life sentence. They found David Kingsley guilty of murder in the second degree. They found him guilty of manslaughter in the first degree. They found him guilty of gang assault, and they found him guilty of falsifying an instrument. So David Kingsley is screwed right now. He's done. He's done. Yeah, what was the jury watching? I don't know. You know, from A to B, I knew they weren't all being found guilty. You got to understand the area that they're in. I explained that. I explained that from A to B very thoroughly. I even explained it twice. I went over it and asked everybody to forgive me for repeating myself. But I think that was the main thing that resulted, is the fact that the jury is from that upstate neighborhood. The jury is from that small neighborhood, and the jury did not want to convict correctional officers. You know, whether they were innocent or guilty, I don't think the jury wanted to convict those correctional officers. You know, yeah, terrible. Gallagher still went and put shackles on his legs. I know, shackles on his legs doesn't really, listen. I don't know what the jury was watching, but putting shackles on someone's legs, he could say that, you know, as he did say that it was protocol, that he needed to be restrained, and that putting shackles on his legs didn't contribute to his death. Um, as I said, I'm playing devil's advocate. Yes, they falsified reports. John, could the defense ask for a change of venue? That's too late now. That's too late. The trial's over. Um, this is really, 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 really unfortunate. Really, really sad. You know, those officers, listen, their gamble paid off. Their gamble paid off. I, oh my God. I don't even know what to say right now. You know, for those of you that don't know, I served 17 years in the New York prison system. I served 17 years in a prison right across the street. I was in Midstate Correctional Facility, which is in Marcy, New York, right across the street from Marcy Correctional Facility. And I know the demeanor of those officers personally. Nobody can say anything to me. You can't tell me any different. I was in prison with them for 17 years straight. I was attacked by correctional officers more than once, unprovoked. I was put on the wall and pat frisked by correctional officers and would smell the vodka coming off of their breath. Okay. I had correctional officers punch me in the face just for saying something, for saying the F word. You know what I mean? An officer reached out, put me in a pair of handcuffs, and punched me in the face. I've experienced their abuse. I've experienced their aggression. And what they are, right, is a bunch, what they are is a bunch of country boys, right? And this, why weren't they charged with the racial aspect? Why weren't they charged with a hate crime? This was 10 white guys that beat a black guy to death with no justification. There's still never been a reason on why they beat to death Robert Brooks. There's never been a reason. Yeah, hopefully the feds do. Hopefully the feds do look into this. Hometown boy. Yep, Sam Bowes. Hometown boys. Yeah, I can't convict. I know his cousin. That's what I'm talking about. It's a small time jury. You know, the feds do have to step up. The feds do have to step up. Oh my God. The mentality, right? Let me tell you a little bit of the mentality of these correctional officers. I was up in Attica for 7 years, 6, 7 years. I did time in Sing Sing. I did years in Sing Sing. I did years in Attica. I did time in Wallkill Prison. I did time in Mid Orange Prison. I did time in Auburn Prison. I did time in Downstate. I did solitary time in Ulster Box. I was in Midstate Correctional Facility. I was around the system. I know the system. And correctional officers, not all of them, There's some good correctional officers. There are. So don't beat them all up. There's some good guys in there. But there is an alarming number of correctional officers that take pride, that have fun in abusing prisoners. They don't see prisoners as human beings. They see prisoners at the bottom of the barrel. They see prisoners as a thorn in society's side. And and a large number of them, I have spoken about this in my videos, a large number of them are racist. A large number of them do not like black people. What could I tell you? They grew up upstate on these farms in these small neighborhoods, hours away from the city and the city life, and they just don't like them. And then they get put in a position of power, right? You give them a badge and a gun. They don't have an extensive education. To be a correctional officer, all you had needed was a high school diploma. So these guys would get a high school diploma. Then you give them a bulletproof vest, a badge and a gun, a pair of handcuffs, and you give them power over a minority, that they've really never been exposed to. What do you think's going to happen? The abuse is going to start. And this is an absolute shame. What was really sad is we didn't get to see who was on this jury. They never showed us who was on this jury. You usually hear about the jury selection, and this jury was just picked real quietly, real fast. I think District Attorney Fitzpatrick did a very good job. I didn't like him in the beginning, but he did a good job. His argument was really strong. Let me look at a few comments here. Really nuts, man. People will take the law into their own hands, someone says. No one, horrible to treat anyone like that. It's not over for Gallagher and Kiefer. It is over for Gallagher and Kiefer. It is over. They were found not guilty. What's going to happen to them now? And I don't want to hear all this. I don't want to even get started into it. I don't want to hear all this. Oh, they were found guilty, but they're going to answer to God. They needed to answer right here. There's no proof that they're going to answer to God, right? They needed to answer right here on planet Earth for what they did, for what they participated in, for the abuse, for the neglect, for the viciousness, for choking, kicking, stomping, beating, sticking Clorox wipes down Robert Brooks' throat. They need to answer for that right here, but they didn't. And the reality is that this is the outcome sometimes, But these juries ain't speaking. Yeah, probably never hear. Candy Kitten says, "I wonder if the jurors will speak." These juries are never going to speak. Yeah, the electronic man says, "I hate these jurors." I'm not feeling these jurors right now either. They didn't serve any justice. These jurors didn't serve any justice for us, man. In this case, and it seemed to go pretty fast. I don't know what else to say, man. I just wanted to come in here and do a quick live and let you guys know that in the Robert Brooks case, for those of you that are just tuning in, David Kingsley was found guilty of murder in the second degree, manslaughter in the first degree, gang assault, and filing a false instrument. Out of the 3 correctional officers, David Kingsley was the only one found guilty, and he was found guilty on all charges. Nicholas Kiefer was found innocent for murder in the second degree, manslaughter in the first degree, filing a false instrument. Not guilty. And Matthew Gallagher, not guilty of murder in the second degree, not guilty of manslaughter in the first degree, and not guilty of gang assault. Yeah, that's it. I see a couple people just tuning in, like my man Blas Barrett. Yeah, that's what happened. Out of the 3 correctional officers, Only one, David Kingsley, was found guilty. The other two walk. And when I say they walk, that means they walk right out of the courtroom. They don't have to go to, well, they were already free. They were out on bail. So that means it's done. They're going to go into the back of behind the judge's chambers. They're going to sign a piece of paper and they walk out free as a bird. It's over. They could even get their correctional officer job back. Not that they will get hired back, but it's a strong possibility. It is a strong possibility that they will get put back on the job. And if they get put back on the job, they will be seen as heroes from the other correctional officers. Boy, those guys that accepted 22-year plea bargains are sick to their stomach. But they also played a bigger role, right? Family will make civil claims against all the governments, against all. The family can't is not suing the government. They could sue the state. They could sue the state, not the federal government. Uh, so they could do that. Will they get back pay? Yes, they will absolutely get back pay. The two officers that were found not guilty will get back pay. They will get their money. They become regular citizens. They still have the right to bear. They're just normal, like it never happened to them. When you're found not guilty, it's like it never happened to you. Which is the way it should be in the law. If I was found not guilty of something, it shouldn't be used against you ever again, and that's what's going to happen to them. They were found not guilty, so it'll never be used against them. Most people, Sam Bowes, most people are clueless how corrupt the system really is. The system is extremely corrupt. I mean, we don't even need to get. The president, Clinton, was sleeping with a 19-year-old girl while he was president of the United States. The mayor is sending pictures of his penis to a 15-year-old girl. The governor of Chicago has got 200,000 in his freezer, and he's smoking crack in the bathroom with a hooker. The parole commissioner, Chris Ortloff, is trying to buy a baby to sexually molest. The priests are molesting children. Listen, the system is corrupt. People are corrupt. A lot of people, especially when you give them power. Power corrupts, right? Nuts. Well, 5 years ago, they wanted to give me many years. All right. Yeah. God. Really sad. Really sad that this happened. Pardon me, guys. I just, I was hoping for a better outcome, you know, especially because I lived with their abuse. I'll say it again. I lived with their abuse. I saw how vicious correctional officers could get. When you get a bunch of people and you give them power, that was a gang assault. Watching them carry Robert Brooks off the bus in the air, cuffed and shackled, as three or four correctional officers carried him into the infirmary. And they put him on that gurney and they started to kick him and they started to choke him and they started to beat him and they started to stick things down his throat. How powerless of a person did he feel? How weak did he feel? How bad did he just want the beating to stop? How bad did he need one of those officers to just tell the officers, chill out, stop hitting him. Stop hitting him. You're going to kill him. Relax, stop hitting him. Why couldn't one officer who had a responsibility for the care, custody, and control of the prisoner? That's what officers, that's their motto, is that they are responsible for the care, custody, and control. That's the Department of Corrections motto. They had no care, they had full custody, and they had no control. And they beat this guy mercifully. It doesn't matter what Robert Brooks was in prison for. He was in prison for stabbing his girlfriend. Guys go to prison for a million different things. Everyone said that Robert Brooks was a polite prisoner. And people testified to this, that they had no problems with him, that he had one write up. One write up. There's guys that get 10 write ups a month, more than that. He had one write up in years. He wasn't a problem prisoner. He was doing his time and he wasn't far from going home. And they beat this guy to death like crazy. Robert Brooks' family didn't get fair justice. For those of you tuning in again, David Kingsley not guilty. David Kingsley guilty, murder in the second degree, manslaughter in the first. Nicholas Kiefer and Matt Gallagher not guilty. That's what happened. I'm gonna wrap this guy's up right now. I'm gonna wrap it up. You know. Thanks for tuning in. I don't know what to say, man. There's not much more to say. You know. I'm really upset about this one. That's a terrible position to be in. To be handcuffed and shackled and have a bunch of grown men just beating you to death. It's fucked up. And then they let him go. I can't believe they let two of these guys go. All right, guys. I'm going to end.